r/NoSleep. Posted by u/horror, junkie123. I got a job at Long John Silver's. There's a reason that no one eats here. I know it sounds bad. I mean, who wants to be employed at a freaking Long John Silver's of all places? Not this guy, that's for sure. But, after a lengthy prison stint that led to moving back home with my parents at the age of 30, I was desperate for anything that would come my way. That's something they don't teach you before you commit a serious crime. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to hire an ex-con. I wasn't exactly doing myself any favors with the sleeves of tattoos snaking up and down my arms and the mean mug constantly stamped across my face, but hey, everyone needs money. I was more than willing to do the work. The problem was, no one would hire me. No company, no matter how large or how small, wanted anything to do with me. I was the proverbial scum on the boot of society. Little did I know, my luck was about to change. I barely even noticed it when I shuffled past. The Long John Silver's, that is. It had always been there, just a poorly lit husk of a building that no mortal creature dared enter. Honestly, I didn't know if it was open half the time. The place was a ghost town. Something seemed different about it that day, though. I scanned the decrepit building, searching for anything out of the ordinary. My eyes lit up when I realized what it was. A yellow, peeling "We're hiring" sign was barely clinging to one of the dingy windows. Immediately, alarm bells were blaring in my head. Yeah, I needed a job. But did I really need one that badly? I pulled out my wallet and watched a small cloud of dust billow into the frigid air as I opened it. Yes. The answer was yes. I did need a job that badly. I scoffed as I made my way to the door. Mason, what are you getting yourself into? The sorry excuse for an eating establishment looked just as shitty on the inside as it did on the outside. I wasn't sure whether to be appalled or impressed. I feel like you really have to try to get a restaurant to look that gloomy. If melancholy was what the owners were going for, they hit the nail on the head. I tentatively called out as I crossed the desolate lobby and approached the counter. Nobody was manning the register. A brief thought crossed my mind. The place looked too run down for cameras. I could probably take off with the till with relative ease. No. Chances were, they didn't have any money in there anyway. It wasn't worth the risk. Hello? Mr. Silver? Anyone here? I'm looking for a job, I shouted, my voice carrying through the empty building. I was met with silence. I decided to wait around for another minute or so, and if no one came to greet me, I'd call it quits. I glanced awkwardly at the fading menu. I couldn't find a single item that looked even remotely appetizing. I was suddenly snatched from my reverie by a noise. Were those rubber boots? I waited in anxious trepidation as the sound grew closer and closer. Was this the end of the line? Was I about to be abducted by the ghost of Long John Silver? I was just about to hightail it out of there, when a loud, hearty voice boomed from behind me. Arg. Who dares enter this here eatery? Dine at your own risk. I spun back toward the counter. I was definitely not prepared for the sight that greeted me. The man was exactly how I'd pictured him. He was a burly guy, probably around 6 feet 3 inches with the boots on, if I had to guess. Long, thick auburn hair protruded from beneath a bright yellow plastic rain hat. An unkempt, scraggly beard rested atop a matching yellow raincoat, and he sported an eye patch over his left eye. I couldn't imagine a more cliché fisherman if I tried. Are you Long John? What does it look like? Of course I am. I'm Long John Silver. The man bellowed, wearing a smug grin on his face. I stared at him blankly. This had to be a joke. Wait, you're serious? No, I'm not serious. I just work here. My name is Greg, he said, dropping the phony accent. Oh. Do they always make you wear that? What, this old thing? He asked, gesturing to his outfit. I nodded. Nah, I just put it on for funsies. Wait. What the hell are you doing here? No one in their right mind actually eats this slop. Oh yeah, right. I saw that you guys were hiring, I said, slightly stunned by his statement. Shoot, I forgot I put that up. Yeah, we're hiring. I'm the manager. When can you do an interview? Whenever's good for you, I guess. Whenever, huh? How about now? I ain't got jack shit going on. Really? I couldn't tell. Yeah, sure. I've got my resume, if you wanna take a look at it, I replied, handing him a crumpled piece of paper from my back pocket. Yeah, let me take a gander. I waited with bated breath for the question that I knew would come. It always did. And, like clockwork, there it was. What am I looking at here? According to this, you have a 10-year gap in employment. You're an ex-con, aren't you? I sighed, glancing down at the floor. This is how every interview went. The employer would find out I'd been to prison, and they'd drop me faster than a hot coal in the middle of July. No point in lying. He'd find out one way or another. Yeah, I am. I've turned a new leaf, though, I swear. I just need a chance. I promise I'll do well here, Mr. Gregg, please, The fake fisherman held up a hand, saving me any extra groveling. I don't care if you've been to the big house. Come, take a seat. We'll start your interview, he said, leading me to the nearest table. I was beaming as I slid out a dust-coated chair. I'd never gotten that far before. Most employers would have kicked me to the curb already. I had a good feeling about this. First question, Greg began, resting his elbows on the grimy tabletop. What have you heard about Long John Silver's? Any of the lore, how shitty the food is, how rundown the place looks, anything at all? Nothing, really. People say the food is ass, but I've never met anyone who's actually eaten here before. Well, that's because no one has eaten here before. Aside from the occasional health inspector, that is. Sometimes we get elderly folks who wander in here thinking it's a Piccadilly or a Golden Corral, but nobody really buys food here. My brows furrowed. That was such a strange thing to tell me right off the bat. This dude must have been off his rocker. The cosplay wasn't really helping his case. Can I ask why no one eats here? I mean, I can't imagine the food is that hard to stomach. Greg shuddered. Oh, believe me, if you'd tasted it, you'd be singing a different tune. But it's not the food that scares people away. Isn't it obvious? I narrowed my eyes on him. No, not at all. This place is a front, for fuck's sake. We don't have any paying customers, the dining area looks like no one stepped foot in it for half a century, and our slogan is fish yeah. I couldn't come up with a lazier catchphrase if I tried. I don't get how no one has caught on yet. Corporate's not exactly doing the best job at trying to hide it, if you ask me. I pondered for a moment. He did have a point. Fish yeah is a pretty trash slogan, and I did feel a bit creeped out even stepping foot into the lobby. Come to think of it, they really weren't doing that much to throw people off their trail. Okay, I'm kinda scared to ask, but what exactly is this a front for? Greg locked eyes with me, his jovial demeanor melting away. You really wanna know? Yeah. That's kinda why I asked. He sighed, tugging on his beard. Well, alright. Follow me. It'll be easier if I show ya. But fair warning, you're about to see some fucked up shit. I've seen a guy get his head bashed into a concrete wall so hard that his brains were gushing out from his skull. I think I'll be okay. That's the spirit. Right this way, Greg said, his boots squeaking against the grungy tile as we walked. He led me past the kitchen into a door that said break room in faded blue letters. He pushed it open. It creaked loudly on its hinges, echoing through the darkness. Greg then flipped a light switch, illuminating a set of concrete steps. He turned to me and glanced down to meet my gaze. You sure you want to do this? Sure as I'll ever be. After you, I said, extending a hand toward the stairs. Greg began clomping down the steps, clutching the handrail for dear life. I didn't blame him. He was a big dude, not to mention the fact that a long tumble down solid concrete steps would probably hurt like shit. I followed Greg for what felt like a millennia. The temperature began to plummet the further down we went. We must have descended at least 4 stories before we reached a door, but it was impossible to tell. I probably should have been more worried about what was down there, but in all honesty, I couldn't think of anything besides how much that climb back to the surface was going to suck. Suddenly, Greg stopped in his tracks. I nearly tripped over my own feet trying not to slam into him. Hey, what gives? I nearly barreled over you. Ha. You? Run over me? Good one. If you haven't noticed, I'm built like a brick wall. But, to answer your question, we're here. Greg could see that I was puzzled. Yes, there was a door sitting before us, but we hadn't reached the bottom. Yeah, this ain't as deep it goes. You don't want to know what's down there, he said, a chill rippling through his body. No, Gregory, actually, I do want to know what's down there. Being all ominous and shit. Who wouldn't be curious after that? Okay, I'll take your word for it. What's in there, then? I asked, pointing to the solid gray door that loomed ahead. You're about to find out. Before we go in, you know to keep your mouth shut, right? Nobody likes a whistleblower. I ain't no snitch. You don't make it out of prison alive by being a rat. That's what I like to hear. Brace yourself. We got some weird crap in here. I nodded. Greg stooped down, holding his eye open for a retina scanner I hadn't previously noticed. A green light flashed, and I heard the locks disengage. Whoa. That is so fucking cool, I muttered, following Greg through the entryway. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Greg led me down a wide hallway. Overhead lights bathed the corridor in a sickly yellow glow. As we continued to walk, holding cells began to appear to our sides. Thick glass separated us from the things within. Once the first one came into view, Greg held up a hand, motioning for me to stop. I diligently obliged. Before you say anything, yeah, I know. This is some wild fucking shit. This, he said, gesturing to the expanse of cells before us, is the real reason LJS was established. I gulped. Holding cells? Great. I just managed to leave prison, and I'd already managed to find my way back to another one. Just my luck. So, who are you guys keeping here? Who? No. You mean what? These things aren't human. Take Kratos here for example. He'd eat you alive without giving it a second thought. I peered through the glass of the cell before us. The exhibit was expansive. It appeared to be modeled after a marshland. Trees dotted the enclosure, and the ground was damp, coated in a thick layer of peat with various shrubs emerging from within. I squinted. It was difficult to see with the poor lighting, but after a moment, I finally understood what I was looking at. A massive, scaled creature slithered toward me. It was dark as night, and its yellow, reptilian eyes were staring daggers into me as it moved. That gaze. It was enthralling. A soft, soothing voice began to emanate from somewhere close by. Normally, that would freak me the fuck out, but in that moment, it didn't. It was calming, almost. That captivating timbre drifted to my ears like a fluffy, unassuming cloud. I was completely entranced. Masson. Come closer. There's something I want to tell you. I absent-mindedly obeyed, my legs willing me forward of their own volition. I nearly had my nose pressed against the glass when suddenly, I felt a stinging pain coursing through my cheek. I turned to Greg, who had a devilish grin plastered across his face. What the fuck, man? Did you just slap me? What the hell was that for? You wouldn't respond. I didn't have a choice. You let Kratos get into your head. Make direct eye contact, and you'll be putty in the palm of his. Well, he doesn't have hands, but you catch my drift. I glanced back at the serpent and nearly leapt out of my skin. Kratos was gargantuan. I hadn't noticed while under his spell, but the reptile had to have been at least 40 feet long from what I could see. Hell, it could have been even bigger than that for all I knew. The only thing I was absolutely certain of, was that it gave me the creeps. Yeah. My bad. Let's get on with the tour, I said, shuddering at the thought of becoming snake food. You got it. Make sure to keep up. He didn't have to tell me twice. I was stuck to Greg's side like I'm under a middle school desk after that. I averted my gaze as we continued our walk. I could feel Kratos's piercing stare boring into my temple the entire time we passed. And I couldn't be sure, but as we left, I could have sworn that I heard a soft voice whisper, "I'll get you next time." That's one freaky snake, I said, trotting to catch up with Greg. You got that right. And you know what the really terrifying part is? I shook my head, unsure if I wanted to know the answer. That thing's not done growing. My jaw fell to the floor. Wait a minute. So you're telling me, that massive fucking snake is a baby? Yep. Kratos will probably outgrow his enclosure eventually. Honestly, though, there's a hell of a lot more fucked up shit in here than a giant reptile. We got things trapped within these walls that'll do much worse than just swallow you whole. Worse than a massive snake with hypnosis? What could possibly be creepier than that? Greg turned to me and smirked, coming to a stop before another exhibit. His devious smile made my skin crawl. I'm glad you asked. This, he said, gesturing to the enclosure, is one of the most evil things we've got on display. Her name is Alice. I peered through the glass, kicking myself for asking such a stupid question. I immediately recoiled at the sight of its occupant. Again, this thing was massive. It was humanoid, standing at around 15 feet tall with antlers extending toward the ceiling. I could see it clearly amid its blizzard-like environment thanks to the fact that its emaciated body was pressed up against the glass. Yellow, glowing eyes illuminated its facial features. It stared down at me hungrily, smiling wide, and showcasing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. It ran a clawed finger down the glass separating us, creating an ear-piercing squeak. Though I knew logically that there was no way it could reach me, I couldn't help feeling like a mouse about to be devoured by a cobra. What the fuck is that thing? I stammered, grabbing onto Greg's raincoat like a terrified child. Alice here is a Wendigo. We don't know exactly what happened to her, but speculation is that she had to eat her dead body to survive a snowstorm around 30 years ago. And this is the result. Wow. Okay, lesson learned. My lips are sealed for the rest of the tour. Good. Just a little further, and we'll be at the control room. Got some people to introduce you to. I glanced back at the monstrosity as I timidly trailed Greg. My blood instantly turned to ice. Alice was waving at me. Fuck, fuck, fuck. That thing is creepy as shit. Note to self, do not get on Alice's bad side. Eventually, we reached the end of the hall. There were 3 doors, one to each side, and another up ahead. Greg sauntered up to the door directly in front of us and again stooped to have his eyeball scanned. Once he was accepted, he turned back to me. Get ready. You're about to meet the crew. They're a strange bunch. Cool beans. Let's go. Greg swung the door open, and we entered the control room. All things considered, it didn't seem like a bad work environment. 2 men, one younger and the other middle-aged, were huddled around a water cooler in the left corner. They wore yellow t-shirts and jeans with Long John Silver's emblazoned on them in blocky blue letters. Intricate control boards composed the right wall. Each was labeled with the name of a cryptid. A long, metal table sat opposite them, where a woman around my age sporting a lab coat sat, dissecting what appeared to be the corpse of a goblin. Hey everyone. Gather round. Got someone I want you all to meet. The team curiously obliged, lining up before us. This is Mason. He just wandered in here looking for a job. Might be inclined to give it to him, too, once we make it through the interview. Mason, this is Lloyd. He's one of our keepers, Greg said, starting with a young, clean-shaven man to my right. He looked fresh out of college. Still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Lloyd offered me a smile and a weak wave. I returned the gesture. This old guy right here is Ahmad. He's our senior keeper. Damn, Greg. I'm only 42. You're not getting any younger yourself. Anyway, nice to meet ya kid, Ahmad replied, extending a hand to me. The dude was jacked. His biceps were bigger than my head, so needless to say, I was a bit intimidated. Despite that, he radiated a warm, inviting aura. I grasped his outstretched palm and immediately regretted it. Every bone in my hand was reduced to dust. And here we have Alana. She's our resident vet of sorts. She conducts research and keeps the entities in good health. Alana waved anxiously at me, only briefly meeting my gaze. She was a looker. Gorgeous blue eyes, straight white teeth, the works. Hubba hubba. I wouldn't mind taking her home to Mom. Suddenly, a short brunette girl burst through the door. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked panicked. We have a code red. One of the entities has escaped.